Notice we're just now covering all the simples. We've had this combination, simple squamous, and we've also had simple cuboidal. So the next logical would be, now we got to do simple columnar. But it's quite a bummer. There's actually two types of simple columnar. Just to add, more things for you to memorize. The difference between these two types is in this word right here, ciliated. One is ciliated, one isn't. So you got to back up and say, what on earth is cilia? Some of you may already know this. Cilia are little hair-like structures, and they come out of the apical, or the top surface of the cell. So out of the apical cell, you've got these, are really made of protein filaments. That's cilia. They're big protein filaments that they project out of the apical surface of the cell. And you can see them really well here. We don't even have to look at the artist's drawing. You can see all these little hairs on the apical surface of these cells. What are cilia for? I bet some of you are thinking of it now. Movement. Cilia will move things around. So they will wave, just waving along, waving hairs. And if you've got an object here, those little waving cilia will help push it along. So that's what cilia is for. So you're going to find simple columnar epithelium in places where you need to move something through a passageway, for instance, like a hollow organ. Just orient you a little bit more. Neither blue nor red shows up terribly well. So in this case, this is the basement membrane right here. So all this junk is connective tissue. We can ignore it. You can see we've got a single layer, so simple, of tall, skinny cells. Hopefully those look really tall and skinny to you, not unlike the cuboidal cells. And then we've got all this cilia coming out of the apical surface. So ciliated is used the first word. You indicate their cilia. Simple, we've only got a single layer. Columnar, we've got tall, skinny cells. So what's the function I just mentioned? The function of this epithelium is often to move some tiny microscopic substance along a tract or like a tube. So the two examples in the body it'll give you, and this function will become really obvious, I hope, when I give you these two examples. Uterine tube. So, sometimes called fallopian tube. I'm fine with using the word, if you put the word fallopian on an exam, I'm totally fine with that. But generally in anatomy, we're trying to get away from naming body parts after people. There is I'm sure it was Dr. Fallopian, and that's who the tube is named after. And this is the tube that goes from like the ovary to the uterus in a woman. And the egg will travel down that tube from the ovary to the uterus. Again, I'm fine with anyone using the term fallopian, but in your book, and I always just call it uterine tube, but same thing, same structure. So movement of the egg, the cilia is just going to push that egg or that ovum along down the tube and into the uterus. Other example of where to find this in the body. A second example, parts of the respiratory tract. Not actually in the lungs, but if you put lungs on chapter 4 exam, I would let that go. By the end of the term, you should know that it's going to be higher up in your trachea. Oh, actually, parts of your bronchi. I'm wrong. It is in some of your lungs, in your bronchi of your lungs. It's in the bigger passageways of your respiratory tract. But if you put either respiratory or lungs, or trachea or whatever, that's fine. Any of those terms that refer to, your breathing passageway are great. So what are the cilia moving in the case of respiratory system? Mucus mainly. Mucus. That substance you're probably all familiar with when you blow your nose. So you have to, and other particles, dirt particles that maybe you accidentally inhaled, living in Salt Lake, and with all these fires that have been coming through and our tendency for pollution, you're going to get some sort of, I put dirt in quotes, it could be any number of different types of particles that get caught in your respiratory tract. This cilia is going to help move those out. So that's where movement comes in, movement of tiny things by this tissue. And now I have to back up and go to non-ciliated. So most non-ciliated simple columnar has some stuff sticking out of the apical surface, but it's not cilia. So just really quickly draw an example of cilia again. So this is a cell, a columnar cell with cilia. Most, and for the purposes of my exam, I don't have any examples of simple columnar that doesn't have either cilia or this other feature that I'm going to show you. It also comes out of the apical surface, but kind of more like fingers like that. It's not protein filament hairs. This is called microvilli. These little finger-like projections out the apical surface. And it's made of plasma membrane folds. So plasma membrane meaning the outer cell membrane. So the outer cell membrane is all folded up here at the apical surface. So it's kind of like wrinkles. So if you had a piece of cloth, instead of laying it flat, you squished it up so it creates these kind of folds. That's what microvilli. And so non-ciliated simple columnar, most of it in your body has microvilli. And for the purposes of my exam, it's fine that you just think of it as always having microvilli. There's a couple exceptions in the body, but we're not going to cover those. So I've drawn the cell again a little bit bigger with microvilli. What on earth are these microvilli for? Well, you have extra plasma membrane, a lot more surface area than you would have if it was just flat. And that surface area allows for more area for absorption. So microvilli increase surface area for absorption. So these cells, and this tissue, is really good at absorption. Just a quick review to orient you what we're looking at. Here is the basement membrane. This is all connective tissue. We don't care about it. Here's the basement membrane, connective tissue. Okay. Here's all our columnar cells. They are super, super skinny. And the microvilli, you can see just kind of this blurry fuzz. Microvilli are actually a lot smaller than cilia. You may notice here you can clearly see the cilia, the hairs, whereas here it just looks like a fuzz because the microvilli are smaller. The artist has kind of drawn them in as if they're more prominent, the little, finger-like projections, but they're really kind of just a blur. And actually we have a name for that blur. The microvilli, we call it a brush border. It's like a blurry border on the apical surface. That's your microvilli. So yeah, really good for absorption. That's what this tissue is for. And you find it specifically in the small intestine. So it's fine if you put that. It's fine if you put intestine. I would take digestive system, anything like that. It's not found throughout the entire digestive system. But again, since we haven't learned the digestive system yet, I don't have the expectation of having that much specificity to know exactly which organ it's found in. However, it might, be worth your while to go ahead and memorize that it's actually the small intestine that's the big absorber, I guess, of the digestive system. So yeah, this is lining your small intestine. There's another key feature I wanted to point out here that you find in the non-ciliated simple columnar in the small intestine. This thing. I'm going to do the artist drawing first. It looks like kind of a white oval, and you can see it pretty, I'm going to change colors, pretty distinctly in the actual photograph too. You can see a bunch of them. Oh, here's a whole line of them up here. That is actually a cell. It's called, you can see it here, goblet cell. I'll write it a little bit bigger. Goblet cell is, this white looking cell here, and it secretes a protein called mucin. It's a protein. And mucin plus water makes mucus. That, again, is in your respiratory tract. It's also in your digestive tract. Little bit of mucus secreted into the digestive tract. It just helps lubricate things and get things moving along. So you do have a little bit of mucus that's secreted by these goblet cells. This is actually a really important feature because goblet cells are often something that people can spot. Erase all of this, that would help. There we go. Goblet cells are often like a feature, a visual feature that you can spot. Some people can spot it pretty easily. If you spot a goblet cell, that's going to tell you, it's going to narrow down the types of tissue that you might be looking at. There's only a couple different tissue types that have goblet cells, and this is one of them. So if you see a goblet cell, that's a hint that helps narrow down the types of tissue you could possibly be looking at. So we'll come back to that as a tool to help you learn all of your epithelial tissues.